Night does not behave the same in places where people are hunted. In the wetlands of Maryland, darkness feels almost alive. It settles into the trees, presses into the ground, and folds itself over the narrow paths that never make it onto honest maps. Somewhere in that blackness, a lantern flickers once, then twice, then disappears. A woman moves through it. Behind her, boots crush wet earth. A dog breaks into pursuit. Another follows. Lantern light swings between trees, searching, measuring, closing in. She does not run wildly. She does not panic. She keeps moving forward, as if the night itself has given her directions only she can hear. They will say later that she was just one woman, that the stories grew too large for reality. But in this moment, she is only breath, memory, and motion. Far north, something waits. Not a place exactly, but a promise spoken in whispers. A hidden network of homes, paths, and names never written down. They call it the Underground Railroad, though no iron rails shine in the dark. Only signals, only trust, only risk. The dogs are closer now, and still she walks back into the dark anyway, because some journeys are not escapes, they are returns. She was born in the early shadows of Maryland, where freedom was not a right, but a condition assigned at birth. On the plantations, a child's future was measured in labor, not possibility. Her name was Araminta Ross. She would later be known as Harriet Tubman, but at the beginning, she was simply property. The world around her moved with quiet certainty. Fields demanded strength long before strength could be understood. Families could be broken apart without warning, traded as easily as tools or livestock. Nothing about it was uncertain except how long you could remain together. Violence was not rare, it was routine. The air itself seemed trained to expect it. Yet even here she learned the land. Forest paths, shallow creeks, the hidden logic of movement when speech could not be trusted. Survival was its own kind of education. Then came the injury that changed everything. A blow meant for someone else struck her head, leaving lasting damage. After that, she began to experience visions, flashes of light, dreams, and a strange sense of direction she could not explain. Whether faith, trauma, or both, it became something she would follow for the rest of her life. Not yet a conductor, not yet a legend, only a young woman learning that survival would one day require movement. After the blow to her head, something in her perception shifted. Life on the plantation in Maryland did not change, but how she experienced it did. Work still demanded her body, and orders still cut through the air without hesitation. Yet now, there were moments where the world felt less fixed, as if something underneath it was quietly moving. She later spoke of visions, not escape, but direction, a sense of being guided when no visible path existed. To others, she remained just another enslaved woman, enduring the same routines as those around her. But inside, something had begun to separate from that certainty. Not freedom yet, not rebellion, awareness. The system depended on predictability, where people would be, how they would respond, how much pressure they could endure before breaking. But unpredictability was beginning to form in her thoughts, and that is where control starts to weaken. There were times she would pause too long, look down paths others ignored, listen when no one else did, as if receiving instructions no one else could hear. It was not yet escape, but it was no longer acceptance. And once a mind begins to imagine another direction, it rarely forgets the way. The decision to leave was not made like a plan on paper. It formed the way pressure builds in stone, slowly, then all at once. In Maryland, escape was not simply difficult, it was hunted. Patrols moved through roads like shifting walls. Dogs were trained not just to track, but to erase doubt. Every mile north carried the weight of capture, punishment, and disappearance. Still, she moved. There is no single moment that feels heroic in real time, only steps that must be taken before fear catches up. She followed what knowledge she had gathered over years, paths through woods, waterways that bent out of sight, the quiet logic of moving when others slept. The night became both cover and threat. Every sound had two meanings. Every light in the distance could be safety or pursuit. She crossed boundaries that were never marked on maps, only enforced by violence. Each step forward was a rejection of a world that claimed she had no right to move at all. Freedom was not waiting at a destination. It was built in motion, in the refusal to stop when stopping meant surrender. And when she finally reached the edge of what she had been told was impossible to cross, there was no celebration, only silence. Because escape is not the end of fear. It is the beginning of never being safe again. But she kept going anyway. Freedom did not feel like arrival. It felt like instability. Beyond the border she crossed, nothing was guaranteed. Names could change, faces could lie. A wrong question could send everything back into captivity. Yet there was something else she had only heard in fragments before. A hidden network moving quietly beneath the surface of America. Homes that opened without payment. People who spoke in silence more than words. They called it the Underground Railroad, though there were no rails or engines. Only routes passed hand to hand like borrowed breath. Safe houses became stations. Guides became conductors. Those moving through it were not treated as property anymore, but as lives worth protecting. She learned quickly that freedom was not a place. It was coordination, timing, signals and windows, quilts with meaning, songs that carried direction disguised as sound. Each journey north was a relay, not a sprint. No one made it alone. Every mile depended on someone willing to risk exposure for another person's life. And for the first time, she saw something more dangerous than escape. She saw structure, a quiet system built inside a nation that insisted it was whole. And once she understood it, she no longer stayed outside it. Most people who reached freedom never went back. Going back meant risking everything again. Capture, punishment, death. The system she escaped was still fully alive, still watching, still waiting. But she did not stay still. Something in her experience of freedom did not close a door behind her. It opened another. She began returning south, back into the same territories she had fled, moving through the darkness on purpose. Each journey required precision, trust in strangers, timing that could not allow error. One misstep could end everything, not only for her, but for those waiting to be guided out. The South was no longer just land. It was pressure. Patrols, dogs, lanterns sweeping through trees, silence that felt listened to. And yet she kept going. She followed shifting signals, a light in a window, a phrase spoken too casually, a pause that meant, move now. Those who met her began to speak of her differently, not as someone escaping, but as someone returning with purpose. She became a presence that appeared, changed everything, then vanished again into night. Each trip north proved the system was not absolute, and each return south proved something more dangerous, that she could not be contained by it, not once, not anymore. History often remembers freedom as a destination, a line crossed, a door opened, a moment when everything changes and the struggle ends. But her story refuses that simplicity. Harriet Tubman's legacy is not built on a single escape. It is built on repetition, on return, on the decision to move back into danger again and again when safety was finally within reach. In the shadowed routes of the Underground Railroad, freedom was never passive. It had to be carried, hidden, and defended by people willing to risk being erased for the sake of others. It existed not as a place on a map, but as a fragile agreement between strangers who chose courage over certainty. What makes her story endure is not only that she escaped bondage, but that she refused to treat escape as the end of responsibility. She became part of the system that made escape possible for others, stepping into the role of guide, signal, and constant disruption to the world that once claimed her. In that sense, she was never simply running away. She was rewriting the direction of movement itself. And the Underground Railroad was not just a route out of slavery. It was proof that even in the darkest systems, human beings can build passageways where none were supposed to exist. Not freedom as arrival, but freedom as action, again and again.